Hey, cash flow maximizers. We're going to go over 5 different areas where your personal finances might be impacted by the coronavirus. Well, and these 5 areas are areas that viewers of this channel may be affected. So 1, we'll go over personal income for employee or employer. 2, if you're practicing dynamic banking, how that might affect you or things you need to watch out for. 3, what the stock market's doing and things we need to watch out for or ways to take advantage. 4, for those practicing the infinite banking concept, we'll go over what we can expect. And 5, if you have an IUL that you're using for cash value growth, how that might be impacted.
Oregon Cash Flow Pro offers free money management advice to help you take control of your finances. And now here's your host, personal finance enthusiast and licensed insurance broker, James Barber.
Let's start with if you're an employee. If you're an employee, this could be a very challenging time. What you have to worry about is, what is the likelihood of your continued employment? That is probably going to be the number one concern. Will you still have a job? Do you still have a job? And are you able to continue working? Are you able to work from home? Do what you can from home? Do you have to still go in to work? Do you still have to travel? Do you have to fly? Are you putting yourself at risk? Are the things you need to do to mitigate the risks in your life from yourself getting infected and your loved ones getting infected? How is that going to affect your employment? There's a lot of businesses that are laying people off. Other people are able to take sick leave. Other folks are able to take vacation time. Maybe you have an employer that allows people to share or give away sick time that other employees can use. And it might just be a situation where your hours have to get severely cut back as well. So these are things that can severely impact your income due to the coronavirus. I expect this will have a very wide-reaching effect across our whole economy. I would urge you, if you're not already, take this very seriously. You may need to start looking for other sources of income right away. Don't know what that may entail, but there might be something that you can do from home, online. Maybe there was something that you've been thinking about starting, an idea you had. Now might be the time to do it. I know at our last recession back in 2008, a lot of people got laid off from their jobs, and we ended up seeing a whole lot of new businesses start at that time. Now, the one thing that I noticed at that time is a lot of these new businesses were started by people who didn't actually know how to run a business. So they ended up using a lot of their savings to buy equipment, and then they didn't charge enough. They were still thinking of just making enough dollars per hour that would match what they used to make, or that seemed like a good wage, but they don't realize all the costs involved with running a business and being able to sustain that business over a long period. So if you're going to go that route, I would highly recommend to do some business management training, talk to some business owners. Don't just throw your shingle out there. Find out what you should be charging. Don't undervalue yourself, okay? Now, it's possible there's going to be a lot of competition and maybe you'll have to get started, but this is not something you're going to want to do for very long, okay? So those are kind of the employee challenges that I anticipate happening. Now, from the employer perspective, if you are a business owner, you're about to encounter some really challenging times. I had a business in 2008 when we hit that recession, and my revenue from one year to the next was cut in half. It was a really, really challenging time for my business, and we were not prepared for it. So this is something that I'm hoping that you're not going to find yourself in that same situation. Uh, what I anticipate happening, if it's not already impacted your business, there's a lot of people that are no longer working. There's people who are no longer going out to eat. They're not. Events have been canceled across the country. We've got schools that are out, so people have to have their kids at home. They're just not going to be out and utilizing the services that normally get used. This is going to continue to have a rippling effect on the whole entire economy. One thing we can expect, I do expect to see continued shipments going to stores. If you own a store, you're probably in pretty good shape now, even though your shelves are bare as people stock up for this. But I do expect that shipping will continue. Truck driver jobs, they're not exposing themselves to folks, so that you should still get regular shipments unless something else happens to interrupt that. Certainly from our local goods, I know we have, there's going to be some limitations on stuff coming in from other countries, but you may end up having to look for some local suppliers. And the challenge will be, how is the employment situation for those local suppliers and manufacturers? Are they able to continue processing and making things, manufacturing items? Because their employees may be home. Their employees may be having to take sick time off. So their capacity to manufacture items may be severely reduced. So one of the big challenges we face is most of our retail stores operate on just-in-time inventory, which means they don't sit on a lot of inventory. Our grocery stores only carry a day or two worth of items, and they expect to get shipments day after day after day on a regular basis in order to keep the shelves full. So when you go into a store today, it might be empty, but it'll be full again the next day, or it'll be partially filled again the next day because they will get new shipments in. We won't know how that employment situation is going to affect the manufacturing side and then have stuff still able to be shipped. I expect that if it does affect that, it'll be slightly delayed from everything else. So hopefully you'll be able to continue getting the products that you need to put on your shelves. If you're a manufacturer, I guess the challenge is how do you provide a safe environment so that your employees feel it's safe to come to work? They need to be able to know that they're going to be able to come in and go to work, but also not be at risk. So I know some restaurants have limited, like if they used to have 75 tables available, now they're offering 35, and they're really just creating that social space so that people can at least feel safer. You want to provide, if I have a fast food place, I would suggest you do what you can, but you got to find some masks for your employees. Customers will not want to come in and see employees that are not being protective of their food. There's a number of different ways that these things can be caught, and we all know that the service industries do not pay enough for people to just take that time off of work. So a lot of people, even if they're not feeling good, they're going to continue to go to work because they have to. So we want to make sure that as a business owner, we're presenting to the public that it is a safe space to come in here. We're being cognizant and aware of the risks, and we're trying to minimize those as much as possible. So for employers, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is what can you do to continue getting people to come in? I think making sure your customers know that you are on top of providing a safe space is going to be one of the biggest things. If you're in the cruise industry, you're probably screwed for a while. I don't think a lot of people are going to be trustworthy of cruises, but if you're in the market for them, they're very cheap right now. So for employers, make sure it's a safe place for employees and customers. Make sure it's a safe place for employees and customers. Number 2, dynamic banking. If you are practicing dynamic banking, we know our number 1 debt weapon is a home equity line of credit. Our number 2 is a personal line of credit. You could also be using credit cards. But for the most part, we're using home equity lines of credit and personal lines of credit. Okay, so what can we expect here? If we have a contraction, if we have a recession, this is not necessarily going to be the same situation that we saw in 2008 where we had home prices crash. That recession was due to the overvaluation of homes and the illegal activities with the bundling of bad mortgages. So all the things were ripe for homes to get devalued very quickly. We're in a bit of a different situation this time around. Home prices are back up really high, but there isn't the glut of junk mortgages out there. They've still done a better job of not lending to people who don't show the ability to repay. It is possible if there's a large amount of people that are laid off of work, can't get any checks, and the government doesn't step in any way to help people, it's possible that we end up with mortgages that don't get paid. People that end up, if this is an extended downturn, people can end up with foreclosures again. So we could end up seeing a big market price drop. At this point, I don't think that that's a very high likelihood. I think a lot of things are going to have to play out, and this will have to be a very extended downturn for that to happen. But I do expect that at the very least, the market is going to not be so tight. There's a number of areas where the housing market is still off the charts. There's not a lot of inventory on the market. I expect that will change. Housing prices will soften, but you're not going to see a big crash. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because your home equity lines of credit is based off the value of your home. So if your lender thinks that your housing prices have gone down, they may get tighter on what they let you borrow. So your available credit could go down. Now, if the banks get in trouble, if this turns into a full-blown recession and the banks get in trouble, if they don't have the money to lend out anymore, they may even cut off your line of credit. They may tell you there is no more line of credit. So your available credit can either go down or go away. That's the big risk. Same thing with your personal line of credit. They may reduce the amount of credit that's available out there, or it may go away entirely. They may decide to cut you off. A lot of that is going to depend not just on your situation and the real estate market situation, but it'll also depend on the bank's situation. So if they are struggling financially, they're going to have to start calling in whatever loans that they can. They're going to have to start pulling back on the credit that they're offering. So if you are with a small local bank, you might be more impacted than you might be with a regional bank, a larger regional bank that may have the ability to absorb more of the effects of this crisis. So that's the challenge. If you're doing dynamic banking, anytime I talk to folks about starting dynamic banking and relying on a home equity line of credit or a personal line of credit to start paying down your debts, one of the things that I tell them is keep an eye on the markets. If it's a home equity line of credit you have, keep an eye on the housing market, keep an eye on the banking sector. Personal line of credit, keep an eye on the banking sector, keep an eye on the overall economy. If it starts to tighten up, you may want to max out your line of credit while you have the opportunity. If you pull that money out of your line of credit, now you have it, you're able to use it and do with it what you need to throughout the crisis. You'll still have to make those minimum payments when you repay it. But you're not going to find yourself in a situation where you don't have access to a line of credit. You don't have access to thousands of dollars that you thought you had access to. That's the biggest challenge and the biggest threat when you're using dynamic banking or you're using debt elimination tools to pay down debt. Is you don't want to suddenly end up in a situation where you thought you had a bunch of money and now it's gone. And that's going to put a big hurt on your finances. So the way we protect against that is you max out that line of credit. You just pull that cash out, put it in your bank. You now have those funds as liquid. You know they're available. So you're able to use those for whatever you need to use them for. You can sit on it, wait for an opportunity to use it, or you just might need to sit on it and know that you have it in reserve. Okay. You never know what you're going to need it for. I know it just in my situation, I don't want to have $60,000 available on my home equity line of credit that's now no longer available. I would rather pull that $60,000 out, have it sitting in my checking account, and be there if I need it for something. Okay, number 3, let's go to the stock market. If you got money invested in the stock market, you're probably a little concerned right now. It's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the stock market, because you have to go through the ups and downs of it, okay? And that can be very, very stressful for some people. I tend to be a lot more conservative, which is why I do infinite banking and I use an IUL instead of being in the stock market. It's taken a big hit over the last couple of weeks. So what do? Well, hopefully you're not in a situation where you have to have that money. If you're relying on that for your retirement right now, you may want to find something else to do so you can leave it in there. You don't want to have to sell. You don't want to have to sell when the market's so far down, okay? Ideally, you want to be able to ride this out. You definitely want to think about holding that. Keep in mind, I am not giving you any type of advice on any particular stocks. I don't do that. I prefer not to be involved in the stock market. These are just overall concepts, things that I would do if I had a bunch of money in the stock market, but I do not have a license to tell you what to do with stocks or stocks you should buy or any of that stuff. When it comes to the stock market, I'm just going to tell you what I would do personally and what I am doing personally with some of the things and things that I would look out for, okay? But don't take this as any advice that you should run out and do with your stocks because I'm not licensed to do that, okay? So when it comes to the stock market, one of the big things is when this market is down, don't sell. You want to hold, okay? The only way to get out of this without actually losing the 20% that the market dropped is by not selling. You still have the same number of stocks out there. You still have the same number of shares. They're just worth less. So you want to wait for those to go back up. Traditionally, that happens in the following year. So we get a big drop one year, it's going to go back up the next year. Okay, it may not go back up all the way. It may take a number of years to get up, but you do tend to get the biggest jump in the next year. So you don't want to miss out on that. This could be very hard psychologically. It's really hard for people to see those numbers keep going down and wonder, oh no, how long can I wait on this? And it's usually right before it bottoms out that people decide they can't wait any longer. They get out and they just lost a whole bunch of money that they didn't need to lose. And unless you have to pull out in order to survive, don't do it. The other option, as these prices have gone down, if you have the ability and if you have the nerve, you could keep buying. All those stocks that you had been buying are now on sale. So you have the opportunity to buy more of them for the same amount of money. So if you were putting in regularly into your 401k, if you were putting regularly into an investment account and buying, you just keep doing that. It's a dollar cost averaging and it works. The other thing to keep an eye out for, and this is where I have a few stocks out there, it's dividends. So in particular, I'm invested in a real estate company that pays out dividends. And the reason I got into that is because the dividend payout was pretty good. So one of the things that I've noticed is the price per share goes way down, but the dividend is still going to continue kicking off the same amount. So now the dividend is worth more per share than it was the last time I bought it. Because of the market of company that I bought this in, I don't anticipate them being hit by this very much and it affecting their dividends. At least I don't expect it to affect it for very long if it does. So, and this is the risk I'm willing to take, okay? So I'm expecting that this dividend, which I was getting, it was about a 12% dividend with where I bought it last year. Now, what I can buy it at, it's going to kick off close to a 24% dividend if they keep the dividend rate the same compared to the price that I buy it at. So that's a big jump. To me, it's worth it to continue investing in that because I think that the dividends will continue at that rate. Now, if something changes, we'll reanalyze the situation. But in whatever company you're in, if you're in it because they're kicking off dividends, what do you think is going to happen with that? Are the shares a better price now compared to the dividend that it's kicking out? Those are questions for you to answer. I'm not here to answer them for you. This was just something that came up on my radar because it's the situation I'm in right now. So I thought I'd share. All right, number 4, infinite banking concept. With the infinite banking concept, we know that we are not tied to the stock market. So for me, where I have all of my extra money, I haven't had to really worry. I only have a little bit in stocks. So for the most part, I haven't worried at all. Because I don't have to worry about the stock market going down. I still have the guaranteed growth, and I still expect to get dividends because the companies that we use have paid out dividends every single year for the last 150 plus years. So I can still, my expectation is still 4 to 6% growth every year within my infinite banking policy. Okay. Not much that I have to worry about, except the life insurance companies that back these infinite banking policies, a part of their earnings is tied to bond growth. So it's possible that if we're in an extended recession, we could see those dividend rates drop. So possible dividend drop. Now with the companies that we like to use, I don't expect that to be very much, if at all. In fact, it's even possible that it could go up. Sometimes the strategies that those companies employ ends up doing better in times like this. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I know that my floor is 4%. I know that I'm guaranteed that 4% growth because it's part of my contract. So for people that practice the infinite banking concept, we're kind of sitting easy on this. We don't have anything to panic about. We're not losing money in this situation. And in fact, if something happens here, we want to be able to buy, we can pull money out of that and buy cheap stocks if we wanted to. We can, if the housing market goes down, we can buy real estate on the cheap. So for whatever situation, we know that with our money sitting in here, we know that it's safe, it's going to guarantee to grow, and we have the ability to take advantage of other areas. We may need it to sustain our businesses, right? Whatever the situation is, that's why we love the infinite banking concept. But keep in mind that we could see a dividend change because of the overall economy. Moving on, number 5, we've got the IUL. Okay, so if you've seen my videos on the IUL, you'll remember our cash value growth in there is not tied to the stock market. It is indexed to the stock market, specifically the S&P 500 or something similar to it. So when the stock market goes down, which it did this last week, I know that I don't have to worry about it in my IUL. The cash that I have in my IUL, I have a 0% floor. 0 is my hero. So my cash growth in the IUL is tied to the stock market, in that when the stock market goes up, my cash value goes up. When the stock market goes down, 0 is my hero. I have a floor of 0%. I'm not going to lose money. So this is what we can expect in this situation. So I looked at the S&P 500 yesterday, and it is now below where it was at a year ago. Okay, which means if I had an anniversary coming up, I'm going to end up earning 0% for that time. Now on my personal IUL, my last crediting period was in February, and I ended up getting 11% growth. So I luckily just beat out the stock market drop for this last year. So I ended up getting the max cap rate of 11%, but for anything that I deposited after that, which I did a small one last year in August. And so that one may be a challenge. I might not earn any growth on that one for that period. But what's going to happen is at that crediting period, it's going to reset where I'm at. So if the stock market was at 3,000 a year ago, and this year, now it dropped to 2,500. okay? That means that the stock market went down, I'm going to get 0%, okay? But when I start out for the next year, my number is going to start out here at the 2,500. So if the stock market does bounce back, which it usually does in the following year, if it bounces back to 3,000, it goes up, I'm going to get my full cap at 11%, okay? That's just how that works with the IULs. So again, kind of like the infinite banking concept, if you have your money invested in the IUL, you get to sleep easy. You didn't lose any of it. So it's one of the reasons why I really love these policies. It's why I show them to you guys. It's why I sell these policies, is because I believe in those concepts. I do not like the idea of waking up and seeing that the stock market dropped 40% and my cash value also dropped 40%. That's not something I'm comfortable with, so I stick with those two. So that's it. That's the video. How the coronavirus can affect your personal finances. If you found value in today's video, be sure to hit the like button below and subscribe to the channel so that you can follow along as we come out with new content.